Hey guys, welcome back. Today we're going to take a look at early documents in American history. Now we're not going to talk about documents from this continent. No, we're going to talk about documents that helped us come up with documents to lead our continent that came from the old world again. So just like we talked about the philosophers and the thinkers, we're going to talk about European documents as well, specifically documents in Great Britain. So last time we talked about Plato and Aristotle, Hobbes, Locke, Montesquieu, Rousseau, and Mill. We talked about these guys and what they contributed to the American government. Plato thought that the smartest person should be king. Aristotle thought that people wanted to be governed. Hobbes thought government sprang up because life was brutish and short. Locke, social will, social contract. Montesquieu, we went through all of these things and we talked about all of them, and I just want to make sure that you guys can recall those. This time what we're going to talk about is the leading documents. So these aren't necessarily thinkers. I mean, they're groups of thinkers that put it down on paper and they don't get credit for authoring it, but we do have some of the most famous documents coming from England that kind of led us to set up our government the way we did today. So in this lesson today, what's going to happen is I'm going to give you guys a chance to tag down the first couple notes. Then we're going to do a primary source activity where you guys are reading part of it and picking out part of what is important in that document, and then we're going to apply it to the ways that it influenced our government. And you guys don't know our Constitution just yet, but we're going to get to know it, and this is kind of that base layer that we're going to look at. All right, so when we talk about the documents, the first one we're going to talk about is the Magna Carta. Now, this was signed in 1215 by King John. King John was forced to sign this great charter, as it's known. All right, and what happened was it was the first time that we established a limit on the amount of rule that a king could have. So no other point in history did we say, okay, king, you can do all of these things. And then all of a sudden, in 1215, we decided, well, not us, but the British. The British decided that, hey, King John has too much power. We need to slow King John down a little bit. We need to make it so that he doesn't quite have as much. So this is the first time in history that the king's power is not absolute, and that we need to start kind of seeing this monarchy and how it's going to change. So at this point, there's a part of the Magna Carta that I want you guys to read. Read it over, think about what it's trying to say, and come up with a response to that question. I'll give you guys some time. At this point, if you're watching the video from home, please pause it. So hopefully you guys had that chance to pause and look at it, and you hopefully came up with some of these constitutional inputs. First and foremost, a limit on power. Our president does not have absolute authority. We have three branches, right? Trial by one's peers. You have to put me on trial. You can't just kill me for these things, right? You have to have a reason, habeas corpus, to imprison me or put me on trial. It can't just be because I'm speaking out against the king. And it gave me due process as a citizen in Britain at that time. I should say as a noble in Britain at that time. Citizens still didn't have money rights, right? You had to own land. You had to be wealthy. You had to kind of be in that upper class, if you will, to make this happen. So these ideas are carried over into our Constitution, and that's a very important thing for us to remember. If we don't remember that our Constitution is not original, we'll have a hard time understanding where these ideas came from. When we take a look at the Bill of Rights, we're going to take a look at specifically the American Revolution and see the actions that the British did in order for us to come up with these Bill of Rights. Now, some of these rights we're going to talk about today, but some of those rights will not have happened at this point yet. And it's really why we go to the Revolution, is because all of a sudden the Magna Carta and the next two documents we're going to talk about aren't being enforced in the colonies, only on the Isle. And that's what they got upset about, and that's part of the reason why they went to that war. The next document we're going to take a look at is the British Petition of Rights, which was written in 1625, but not signed until 1628. All right? King Charles I was abusing his power. They were making it so that basically he was doing all of these things and trying to take money and apply different taxes so that he could fight a religious war. And it's all during this English Civil War, which is fascinating. If you guys haven't had a chance to and you want to know a lot about the English Civil War, I'm going to recommend the Revolutions podcast at this point, because that Revolutions podcast and the English Civil War opened up my eyes to really what the political actions were happening there. And it's an easy way for you to study the English Civil War without really having to study. If you have some time, a bus ride, a car ride, and a set of headphones and an internet connected device, you can download those podcasts and start to listen. But basically, the wealthy nobles wrote the British Petition of Rights. And during it, King Charles was breaking a lot of rules set forth by the Parliament. So now all of a sudden we have a Parliament, a kind of like a legislative body that goes forth and do that. So at this point, I want you guys to read the primary source document on the back about the British Petition of Rights and pause the video. So welcome back. Real quick, constitutional inputs. You can't station troops in civilian homes, right? That's our Third Amendment, actually. That's one of the things that we really carried over. No military trials of civilians that need to be trialed in a civil court, right? And no taxes without the authority of Parliament. So part of the reason was Charles and Parliament were fighting during the English Civil War, and Charles was imposing taxes without the power of Parliament, which Parliament was like, hey, you can't do that, you need to follow our rules, and he wasn't, so they made sure that this happened and this took place. The last document we're going to take a look at is the British Bill of Rights, and this is following the overthrow of King James II. All right, King James II was a Catholic. Catholic and Protestantism seemed to fight all the time in the British Isles, including in Ireland. When we take a look at Northern Ireland versus the rest of the continent of Ireland, you see a predominantly Protestant area in Northern Ireland, part of the British Empire, British Kingdom, and you start to see Ireland as a majority Catholic, and the issues and absolute kind of battles between the two have been happening for years and years and years. So the English Bill of Rights was passed when William III, who was originally of the Netherlands, came over and kind of took over the throne as a Protestant, and that was the big idea. He took over the throne after this Bill of Rights was written as part of kind of this glorious revolution, and it was a bloodless revolution. He just kind of sailed across the channel and then ultimately basically kind of marched on the capital and forced King James out, and it was very peaceful, but it was a turbulent time. And what came out of it was the English Bill of Rights. So read the English Bill of Rights. There's 2 amendments in the English Bill of Rights on the back, and I want you guys to take a look at those 2, and we'll go from there. So hopefully you guys got a chance to do that. So constitutional inputs prohibited cruel and unusual punishment, the right to petition the government, and the right to bear arms. So things that we still have in our Constitution, right? This cruel and unusual punishment and the right to petition the government and the right to bear arms are things that were kind of put forth in the British Bill of Rights that in 1790, when the Americans write their version, they're going to pretty much take those word for word. All right, so those constitutional inputs remain. So in summary, right, many ideas about American government came from Great Britain. Although we fought a war to free ourselves of the tyrannical king of Great Britain, we took a lot of the government ideas from Great Britain to set up our country. All right, what ideas hold true to this day started as British ideas. You can go and see a debate about gun rights in our country right now. And in 1688, it was okay for the citizens of Britain to have guns. And in 2014 or 2015, it's okay for the citizens of America to have guns. It's written into our Constitution. Now, Britain's an interesting thing because Britain no longer allows, Britain is kind of interesting in the sense that it definitely does not see necessarily all of the same rules applied, and the Constitution's actually not written down and built of numerous documents like the Magna Carta, the Petition of Rights, and the Bill of Rights, and all of those kind of create this new Constitution. It's not a written Constitution, which seems odd for us because ours is written down. Anyways, in summary, hopefully you guys got the kind of picture of this and kind of understand some of the leading documents. Now, tomorrow when you guys come to class, the big thing is we're going to start a post-apocalyptical government. So you guys are all survivors. And for that, I congratulate you. We'll see you then.